Okay, being slightly past 11:30, is there a motion to return to open session?
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Sharon, do we need to do anything on item 2? Receive the presentation or anything? Okay, let's go back and just so the record's clear, receive the presentation from the presenters on item 2.
I'll move to accept it or receive it.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Okay. Chantel, would you like to introduce our next group, please?
Right now we have the Broadway group with us, and they are going to present their proposal for owner's rep. They do not have a PowerPoint presentation, but there is a handout in front of you. Has a little blue coloring on the front that they'll be referencing through their presentation. Again, they have a time slot of about 45 minutes, and part of that will be a Q&A so that we can ask questions and have a dialogue with each other. If you have any questions for me, feel free to ask. Otherwise, I'll just turn it over for them.
All right, thank you.
All right, no problem.
Morning.
Good morning, and thank you, Chantel. We appreciate the opportunity to be here today. Please don't take it as a slight that we did not provide a PowerPoint presentation. We actually sort of hoped that we were sparing you the need to have to review another PowerPoint presentation. We submitted our information in the RFQ and feel like that the submittal that we provided describes who we are and articulates our experience and didn't see the need to have an additional presentation. So thank you for the opportunity to be here. My name is Clay Coldiron, and I'm the founding member of Broadway Development Group. I've been doing this for about 10 years. My partner here is Jeremy Hafferty. Jeremy's been a part of the firm now for going on 3 years and has extensive construction experience, adds a great resource to our team, a great depth of knowledge and history. And he'll visit with you in a moment when we get past the introduction here. Broadway Development Group was founded. I was in the public sector. I was in Midwest City, the city of Midwest City, and also the city of Edmond was the public works director at the city of Edmond. So I'm intimately familiar with local government and the issues in terms of accountability and for example, we're here today at a public hearing that's being televised. A high level of accountability we certainly understand. I decided to get back into the private sector and got into the private development business in 2008, and was at Turner and Company in Edmond. We worked on a number of commercial and residential products and projects, and decided to form my own company and do my own thing in 2012. We founded Broadway Development Group in 2014, and we've been working for owners and for clients ever since. And working for the owners and representing the owner's interest at the exclusion of architects and contractors is what we do. Now, not to be unfair to architects or contractors, but probably the single most important thing that we do is that when we work for a client, we consider that client's money our money. And I have found in life and in business that is a separator where you have architects. They care about the client's money, and I'm not criticizing architects or architecture. I'm just saying that culturally, it's more difficult for them to see the money as their own money in a project, whether it be the architect or the general contractor. And so we specialize in that aspect. We consider the owner's interest first. It is our singular focus in the project. Our second most singular focus would be on being fair to the architects and the general contractors in the process, because construction carries a high amount of risk. We've had many projects that we started and we did a great job in investigation of the project. We had all the geotechnical investigations and all the civil engineering that the project could stand, and we open up the earth and water just starts pouring out of every rock. In that situation, it requires a solution, and change orders are painful. Change orders are typically unbudgeted, and so they're very painful to the process. And so we work with those architects and with our geotechnical engineers to solve those problems. Oftentimes requires additional money being spent. But that's where we really drill down and focus to make sure that any additional money that's ever spent through a change order, through what we would call an error or an omission in the design plan, or even in this case of this water example I'm providing you, there was no mistake. every single step that could have been taken to mitigate that risk had been taken, but still the risk is still present, and occasionally it happens. So with that said, I think a couple of the things that are important for us to communicate to you today. We are familiar with the ARPA rule and 2 CFR Part 200. We've read those regulations. They are extensive. Most of the language has to do with the accountability of contractors and subcontractors. We understand accountability. It fits in with our ethos to look after the owner's money, and so documentation and accountability is the highest priority. And so we are very willing to deal with those requirements and implement them in full. We have no past, current, or pending litigation. So I think it's a testament to our ability to work with owners, architects, and contractors that we're able to resolve the issues without being entangled in litigation. And we all know that contracting can oftentimes lead to litigation. There are oftentimes misunderstandings. But if the contract documents are tight, and we would hope to get to weigh in on those contract documents to some degree, we understand that you'll be using the competitive bidding process probably for the selection of contractors. I don't know all the details about that, but I assume Title 61 would be important. But we can use those documents to mitigate risk, but risk will always be present. And the opportunity for litigation will always be present. We have experience with not only ground-up construction, myself, horizontal and vertical development, but also with renovation projects. Renovations are, someone might think, well, the scope is more narrow, it's more tight, it's easier to manage. In some ways, it's more difficult to manage because in a renovation project, the quality of your data that you collect on the front end about the existing space, the question is how in-depth is that data? How much do they really know what is above the ceiling tile? What do they really know about what's behind the walls? It's very difficult sometimes to capture that data. And so oftentimes in a renovation project, you run your highest risk. I think in terms of how our team lines up with your scope, you have, for example, you have an emergency management operations center that you would like to build. At least that's what I read in the RFQ. I would love to work on your project because I've been to Emmitsburg, Maryland, and I have received several, I've been there at least 4 or 5 times and received certifications from the Emergency Management Institute, EMI. They're a part of the National Fire Academy. It's a wonderful facility. The classes are fantastic. If you ever get a chance as a county official to participate in the Emergency Management Institute, I would highly recommend it. I understand emergency management culture, and one of the very important things about getting a project right is to be able to communicate with the ownership and be able to help them develop their program for exactly what they want to have designed and built. The articulation of the program will be the key to getting exactly what you want in this project. We understand the culture in emergency management, and I think that'll be helpful to our success, given that we're given a chance to work together. I mentioned my local government experience in the city of Midwest City and the city of Edmond in Title 61. The way that we see moving forward with your work is that I would be the lead project manager with regard to land acquisition, entitlements, programming, design, and permitting. And Jeremy would take the lead with regard to pre-construction, the management of the pre-construction process, which is always important in terms of forming a budget, construction administration actually during construction, and then coordinating the owner's FF&E. I think it's oftentimes it's very easy for owners to undervalue the difficulty and the challenge in getting the owner's FF&E correct. FF&E, well, what is that? Well, furniture, fixtures, and equipment. Okay, well, I understand furniture, but what does it really mean? What it means is, for example, it means all the things that architects do not design and that architects and engineers do not design. For example, they do not design your security systems. We may decide to have a security design team that specializes in security. You may make that choice on this project, but typically an architect would not design a security system. typically they would not design any of your low voltage systems that translate data back and forth between servers and users. Those are examples. Low voltage systems, security systems, telephone systems, all of those low voltage systems that don't use high voltage electricity are not designed by architects, and the ownership of the project needs to take the lead in getting those services installed. And so that's a very important part of the scope, very important to the end user, and we'll lead. We'll be very happy to lead. We have a lot of experience and very happy to lead that part of the project. We will not use any subcontractors. The Broadway Development Group will provide all the services. Jeremy and I will provide all of those. We will not delegate them to anybody else at our firm. The two of us will lead the project. We will be accountable to you, and we will deliver. All of our services will be provided in-house. So with that said, we look forward to the question and answer session, but I'd like to give Jeremy an opportunity to visit with you.
Good morning, afternoon.
Morning.
So Clay and I have been on both sides, this side of the lectern and the other side for interview process. I can tell you as a team, it's good to be first. You either want to be first, last, but one thing you at least want to do is be interview at noon, because I'm worried about all you guys worried about lunch instead of listening. But kidding, kind of. But we are going to make this short, and we'll try to be as succinct as possible, and kind of go through our qualifications without going in too much depth of things you've already seen or heard. So again, as Clay mentioned before, my degree is in engineering, but I've been into different levels of construction my entire career throughout different states, starting in Oklahoma, all throughout California, Texas, Arizona, and a variety of projects. I've managed over 50 projects, approximately totaling $750 million. I feel confident saying that I have my diversification of projects is extensive to the point that there's very few projects that I haven't seen or touched some portion of. I love my job. I love construction, and I've got to be on the representative side for the past 3 years with Clay, and also 3 years prior, specifically owner's representation through a couple of the companies that I worked with in the past, building all around the country. So again, there's not a lot that I haven't seen out of, for example, the sheriff's facility. One of my projects is the City of Dallas Police Headquarters. I draw a lot of comparisons to that, knowing it's a ground up new project. Almost every through the different renovations that we have of the 7 different projects for the county, I have some level of experience or extensive experience in managing those projects and all levels through project-construction, the construction, and the closeout of those projects. And I very much look forward to the opportunity to be a part of the project team. And we'll turn it back over to Clay for our closing remarks. Thank you.
I don't know that I have any closing remarks. I think we're ready to hear from you and respond to your questions and any ideas, anything you would like to discuss.
Stacy.
At Edmond, how involved you were in the Service Center campus that's east of I-35. That's a marvelous campus and very many different business models on that campus.
Mm-hmm.
So help me understand, I know your background, but in these projects, we're going to have mechanical, electrical, plumbing, comms, all that stuff. How many people in your staff have those licenses and skills that's going to be involved?
Yeah, we don't have the licenses. There's no requirement for general contractors to have a license. Electrical contractors, yes. Mechanical contractors, yes. But those are all subcontractors, and those are specialties. So don't have any licensing. There's not a requirement for the licensing. If there was, we would acquire it.
I know, but you're going to be reviewing those elements in the plans when they come in to make sure that we've got everything covered before we go out to bid. So
that's a great comment, because I very much would like to address it. It's going to sound like I'm disagreeing with you, but I'm really not trying to. We do not review plans. Owner's reps do not review plans. A good owner's rep, because think of the liability that we would create for ourselves and for the owner if we reviewed those plans and put our stamp of approval on those plans. We need the liability to stay with the designers. The owner needs the liability to stay with the designers. What we need to do is to make sure that the architects coordinate their electrical, mechanical, and plumbing scopes with the architectural plan set. In my experience, what I have found is that is the single greatest driver of change orders. The single greatest driver is the lack of coordination between the architectural plan set, the electrical, plumbing, and mechanical plans. That's where a lot of the cost is in each and every project, and that's where a lot of the failings in my experience. So it's important that you understand, it's not that we don't want to review plans. It's not that we want to avoid some piece of work. It's not that. It's that if we did review the plans and if we approve them, then the designer of those plans that did stamp those plans would try to share their liability with us and with the owner, and that would be a mistake for the owner.
Okay, I appreciate you telling us what your approach to the project is. And in the RFQ, we said we could add to or subtract from the list. So
Sure.
you read some projects, I think about 7 maybe. We're up to 17.
Oh, okay.
Does that
Well,
scare you at all?
No, not at all. Not at all. You've seen how much work we've done. I've done $85 million worth of owner's rep work just in the last couple of years. So, no, not at all.
I can tell you this too, personally.
Speaking to the microphone.
One of my projects, I was responsible of a bond program, school district bond program for $150 million. We did 13 projects, which was originally scheduled for 7 years. We shrunk those in 3.5 years. I was responsible for 100% of the bond money, oversight of the dollars, and contracting to the general contractor and overseeing each of those teams. So to me, sometimes it's kind of like kids. You have a couple, it's a lot of work, but you get to a certain point and it's just another kid. A lot of projects, but all those projects, it's all the same process, and it's all part of just applying your procedures with each one as they come.
Where was that bond program at?
Deer Creek Schools.
Mr. Monroe, do you have anything?
Yeah, I understand you're gonna take care of most of this in-house between the two of you.
Yes.
So structural, HVAC, mechanical, plumbing, all.
Going back to Stacy's question, Mr. Trumbo, uh, again, we do not intend to review plans. That takes a lot of time out of the scope. But in terms of, do you plan to start all 17 projects at the same time?
We have a deadline that projects need to be.
Mhm. Mhm.
And yes, many of the same time.
Very good. Well, that's exciting because absolutely, Jeremy and I have the resources to complete even up to 17 projects. Typically, the people that do the work are the architects, engineers, contractors, and subcontractors. They actually execute the work. What we do is we guide that work for the owner's benefit. We manage that process. And you can imagine, for example, in design, there's no reason to meet every week because it doesn't give them enough time to accomplish enough design. From one week to the other, it's not enough of a scope to review. So we typically review at schematic design, at design development, at construction documents, and then during construction administration, we'll be on the job in construction. And so those are the phases of design that actually drive the designs for the project that will be permitted. And we typically only have to meet just a few times during each of those phases of design. Now, once construction begins, we will meet weekly with the project team that's executing the work. We'll meet weekly with them. At a minimum, it would be weekly. That's a requirement on all of our projects, is a minimum of weekly project meeting. The good news is that in light of video technology and Zoom technology, and we do a lot of those calls by computer, and they work very well. We have all the documentation. We have an agenda. We have a record of the meeting. We have all the issues. We document where we are with regard to requests for information or the submittal log or any issue that comes up during construction, any coordination with the owners, contractors for low voltage or security. And so that sounds like a great challenge, and we weren't aware of 17 projects, but if there was ever a determination that because of some later developing issue that we needed to have more scale, we would negotiate with you to figure out how to go forward. Whatever benefit, whatever adjustments we needed to make to our agreement, we'd be willing to do that. It would not change our approach, and it would not change the attitude with which that we would deliver the projects.
Are you under contract right now?
No, sir.
So, admittedly, this is not an area that I'm real familiar with, so I need a little bit of help. You don't review plans.
Will. Not to certify them.
Yeah, we'll review every plan.
Okay, so walk me through,
there's
you see an issue, a conflict, walk me through how that's going to work if you don't review, but yet review.
Okay. Well, I think to Clay's point, talking about basically putting your liability in terms of design, that's something that we trust the design team to accomplish. We'll, me is my background specific, of course, we're going to review every plan, but we're going to be working with the design team also to make sure that every level of design is accomplished, work with them as another layer of oversight with the design team. But in terms of, I think, Clay's point, we're not going to be stamping or approving or certifying any plans. We're working on behalf of the owner to oversee the design team and ultimately the contractor.
So if there's red flags in the plan, like you'll highlight any red flags. And
Absolutely. Again, I look at it as another level of oversight and quality control through the entire process. So not only from the design team through the different iterations of design, but also when we get into contracting with the general contractor in terms of that level of quality control, overseeing them as well during the construction phase.
I think this is a very important question that you raise, and it's one because it all ends up resulting in a potential change order. You've heard this said before, I'm sure. There's never been a perfect set of plans, and there never will be, and it's because there is human error and there are mistakes. The question is, how do you mitigate the risk for cost to the owner? And it really and truly can only be mitigated at the design level. At the design level in that review. And so we would hope that if we're selected that we would get to participate in the selection of the architectural teams. During those interviews, we would make it very clear to the architect about what our expectation was with regard to their coordination of their architectural plans with the mechanical, electrical, structural, and plumbing plans. I could give you an example just recently in a project in the last 60 days, a project that the contractor was not aware and the architect was not aware until the structural beam was welded in place 3 feet too low. It was already welded and up before someone finally looked up and said, well, we're trying to coordinate this other piece and it doesn't fit because this beam is in the way. It was not caught by the architect. It was not coordinated between the architect and the structural engineer. And There is no owner's rep service that you can identify that could have reviewed that plan and that will spend the time reviewing that plan and catching that error on the part of the architect. So it had to be handled through a change order. And then that's where it gets tough, because representing the owner, we want to make sure that we treat the architect fair. Now, they had a lack of coordination, so they have some culpability in that outcome. The contractor could have looked forward in the plans and potentially identified the conflict as well, but they didn't. It was actually constructed. In that case, most of the time, we're going to get some compensation from the architect that is attributed or given to the owner, provided to the owner in that case, because a mistake has been made in their plans that they did not catch, and the work was executed as per the plans. And so now the owner has to go in and pay to have that beam cut loose and raised 3 feet. So in that case, we're going to look to the architect to compensate the owner for that issue, because it's not just an omission, it's an actual error that was constructed. Many of my clients are oftentimes frustrated by this issue of errors and omissions and who's going to pay in the event of a mistake. It's very delicate, as you can tell by the technical way that I'm explaining this one example to you. We will be as aggressive for the owner as we are allowed per the contract that's eventually approved and executed. We will be aggressive for the owner's rights, and we will hold the architects and the contractors accountable per their contract documents for their work.
Let me try a different way. Are you all comfortable enough that if there is an error, architect makes an error, a mechanical engineer makes an error, electrical makes an error, are you comfortable enough to pick that up prior to the work being done? I think that maybe was where Keith was trying to get in terms of subbing that work out. Not that we're asking you to stamp their plans. We've already paid for that, right? In the example you gave, as a construction manager, someone's on site, the review of the plans, I would have thought perhaps would have caught that. Maybe not. Again, I don't do this for a living. That's why we're looking to hire somebody. But I think that was where Mr. Monroe was going, was that yes, we've had someone that has developed plans and stamped them, but we're looking to that owner's rep as someone who can review those plans and catch errors ahead of time, make suggestions. And so I think maybe that's a better way of asking.
Sure. Well, one, I wasn't aware that plans were already designed, because oftentimes we work with the design team through
Right.
the entire
There are
process.
some of these projects where they are to the point of being ready to start.
Ready
There
for
are some that we're in various stages of design and development.
Okay.
And there are some that haven't started yet. So I think, to your point, there would be an opportunity to be on the ground level in some and come alongside.
So I think I finally hear exactly what you're saying, and I have an answer. And my answer is that no, we are not qualified to review plans in order to mitigate the owner's risk. However, if that is a desire of yours in this scope with you, we're very willing to hire a second architectural team that would flow through our scope to review the plans. Very willing to do that. It's not something that I thought you were looking for, but now that I know that that is a specific goal that you have in mind, we would be very willing to partner with an architectural firm to provide plan review on top of the architectural plan set. Very willing to do that. I just didn't realize that's something that you would want done.
Are there other questions?
Do you have experience with asbestos abatement?
I do. Through, as Clay mentioned, the issue of renovations versus ground ups. They have had extensive experience in different renovations, and they are much more difficult, and a lot of renovations, including asbestos remediation. So yes, I have.
And any of your projects that you've done, would they fall under the emergency management requirements that we may encounter with a couple of our projects? The specifications for those buildings?
I can't imagine that the emergency management building that you're talking about constructing, I can't imagine it would be much different in the scope of the office buildings and various facilities that we've already experienced. I would think that'd be fairly similar. At least my understanding of emergency management. I mean, I would imagine you're looking for office space. Is there going to be a dispatch facility associated with the emergency management operations center? Probably a dispatch facility.
Most likely.
And do you think, is it manned 24 hours, 24/7, 365?
Do you know, Joe? Emergency management?
My belief on that is that it would be a secondary site,
Mhm.
a hot site, if you will.
Mhm.
I don't believe it's been determined yet as to whether or not
Mhm.
it would be the primary site.
Right, that's a program issue, and so that'll be determined in the program of all the interested parties. Because a lot in emergency management, a lot of times the incident command system is set up in the field. Sometimes they could have that in a collective administrative building somewhere, but oftentimes they move around to where the emergency is. So
Anything else, Stacy? Anything? Anything else from you, gentlemen?
no, sir.
Mr. Monroe? Okay. All right. Chantel, is there anything we need to do before we break? Yeah. Is there a motion to receive this presentation?
Second.
Yes. All in favor? Aye. All right.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Good to see you today. Thank you.
Okay, our next presentation is scheduled for 1:30 this afternoon. Do we have a motion to recess until 1:30?
Second.
All in favor? Aye.